Hello, 4-year journey members. It's Bob Lucas here on Thursday, November 19th, 2020. I hope you're all doing well. This is another version of the 4-year journey. It's been a couple of months since the last video, so it's been a decent gap, and obviously a lot has changed, and we're going to get into that in this video. I know many of you are very excited. I think this has been encouraging, at least, and I'm going to talk about that. Today's video, obviously, we're going to go over where we stand in the 4-year cycle video, where we've come in the last couple of years, where I see us potentially going. So we'll look at some charts in some detail. I'll go over the model portfolio and talk about some possible trades in the future, where I'm looking at maybe getting out and so on. And then I'll actually spend quite a bit of time just sort of in free thought, free talk about what I think is coming up in 2021 and some of the emotions we're going to be feeling, some of the tools that we're going to need to implement to take advantage of what I think, or what hopefully is going to happen here in Bitcoin over the next 12 to 24 months. A lot of this is content I've already covered. I've done around 10 or so videos. It is very difficult to come up with brand new content. So a lot of it's just going to be rehashing of content I've provided in the past, but I think it's going to be much more tailored to where we are in the cycle and much more relevant to you for where we are in the cycle. So a lot to get through. Let's get into it. So it's time to celebrate, right? Bitcoin hit $18,000 just a month or two ago. It was at $10,000 or $12,000, and people were talking about it going back down below 9,000. Still had plenty of talk of 5,000, 4,000, 3,000. You know, the same old crew, the same old calls. But here we are at 18,000. I really hope that most of you, at least, who have been following along, had this well and truly in their plans, right? And expected. Now, I understand Bitcoin seems to go up by $1,000 every 3 to 5 days of late, and it has, and it's in somewhat of a mini little blow-off move, and I'm going to cover that shortly. But it's important here to realize that it's not time to celebrate. You have successfully, if you're still holding all of your Bitcoin, really gone through the accumulation phase and taken advantage of the accumulation phase, and now you're seeing a position 3x, maybe even as close as 4x up, which is great, right? It's from a compounding standpoint. If we're looking at Bitcoin getting over 100,000 in the future, this 3 to 4x makes a big deal. Okay, there's going to be a lot of people who are going to get into Bitcoin, who are just starting to get into Bitcoin, and we see celebrities on Twitter talking about, should I get into Bitcoin? Of course, they come out of the woodwork when it's at 18,000, right? And we knew they would. They're all going to start getting in between 18 and 30,000, especially when we hit the all-time high number. So yes, it's time to celebrate, only from a standpoint that you've done a good job to this point in holding, even though you've been worried about a pullback. And it's important now to realize that a pullback is probably going to come at some point. Now, it may not happen until we hit an all-time high and then pull back, but there's going to be a pullback. There's going to be a sharp pullback at some point. There's going to be a consolidation at some point. There's going to be months of sideways grind perhaps as well. There are multiple situations that we need to be prepared for, like we've been prepared for this entire time. Don't forget, when I first published my 4-year cycle video 2 years ago now, almost in December of 18, we were in the depths of the bear market, the final decline. Bitcoin was down 85% at my recording. It was at the depths of that bull market, right? And it took a lot of courage for a lot of us here to get in at Bitcoin at that level. Everyone was talking about essentially the death of Bitcoin, or it going down to, to single, down below the $1,000 level. There's hyperwave. There was all these Elliott wave predictions of triple digit, like $700, $800 Bitcoin. Everybody was bearish, right? So it took a lot of conviction to be able to say, no, this is a cycle that's coming to an end, and it's time to get in. And since then, right, we've seen, I've done multiple videos. We've seen multiple rallies. We've seen shakeouts. We've seen sell-offs. We've seen capitulations. in the Bitcoin space, we've seen hacks, we've seen government crackdowns, we've seen more regulation. We've talked about, or everyone's thought about minor capitulations that didn't happen. And here we are 2 years later from that point, and Bitcoin is up 350% at 18,000. And none of that in the end really mattered. It didn't really matter that we had these shakeoffs and capitulations and hacks, because the cycle dictated and the destiny for Bitcoin was already there. That was all noise. They were all narratives for people to either sell or buy at certain times based on where the path of least resistance was in Bitcoin at the time, right? But here we are today at $18,000, and all that is history. All that is history. All those events are history. The only thing that has changed is time and blocks, okay? And Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin is about a consistent clock in terms of its blocks, okay? And that's what's changed. It's been time, okay? Time for the rebirth to take shape from that bear market low, time for new accumulation to develop, and time for Bitcoin to gain more trust, okay? Because Bitcoin is the soundest of money. Whether, I don't think there's an argument from a technical, from a financial, from a fundamental standpoint, Bitcoin is vastly superior to everything else that's out there. Nothing comes close. And everybody knows this, even traditionalists, even the gold bugs, right? We know, I'm a gold bug for decades, and I still hold a lot of gold. I love gold, but I know Bitcoin is superior in every way, except Bitcoin lacks the trust. Now, many of you who are, let's call them Bitcoin maximalists, who have been around for a while in this space, your trust is unwavering. I do know that. But from a broader sense, from a massive capital perspective, trust is the issue with Bitcoin. Okay, can they trust it? It's new. It's technology. It's not something tangible that they can touch. And where there's a lack of trust, or where there's not enough trust, there's not going to be enough value placed on the network and on the Bitcoin. Okay, so what's happened here over the last 2 years is that the time perspective has created more trust, and more trust equals value. And this is what we're seeing over these 4-year cycles, okay? The halving is important, but that's only a financial perspective. That's just a supply side thing. Where the value comes from is in trust. And as time progresses, as each block gets minted and circulated around the network, trust gets developed. And as trust gets developed, the price goes up, okay? So we've seen price go up consistently over the last sort of 2 years, but with, of course, massive shakeouts and rallies in between. But since the Genesis block, we've seen the same progression. As time progresses, price goes up. In the shorter time frames, in between 4-year cycles, we get massive volatility. You have to remove that massive volatility from a hodless perspective, from a long-term perspective, and ignore the fact that you get 80% swings in Bitcoin over or during a 4-year cycle, and focus on the fact that block after block after block, it continues to get minted, and the more blocks that we produce, the more trust you're going to get. And this is the reason why during this last 4-year cycle, compared to the prior 4-year cycle, where it was mostly techies and digital folks, and even young millennials, mostly the retail crowd who was part of this ICO boom that drove Bitcoin higher. Yes, of course, there was institutional involvement, and there was deep-pocketed people involved, but let's face it, it wasn't widespread and it wasn't institutional based. In this 4-year cycle, based on the groundbreaking work that was done in 16 and 17 and so on, we now have the foundations for the institutional onboarding, and that's been occurring ever since, and that's been covered in my videos in the past, that we have an accumulation that has been ongoing now for the past year or so, and it's finally given way. There is just not enough supply in this market. The supply had run dry, and this is why you're not seeing a massive funding increase in the perpetual swaps or in the futures markets. You're not seeing that because this is a spot-driven rally. This is a supply problem, but also a demand issue. We've had significant demand and larger size demand coming. Obviously, there's been talk about MicroStrategy and Square buying for sort of their treasury asset positions. We have billionaires coming out saying they're buying 5 and 10% of this, but we also have traditional hedge fund managers, Paul Tudor Jones, for example, and others, saying that this could be the next big thing. Raoul Paul from Real Vision, although he's been involved for years in the past, but you can clearly see the level of involvement now is much broader, it's much deeper, and it's becoming real, right? I don't see people saying Bitcoin's a silly kid bubble anymore. Serious people with history of trading and experience are now calling Bitcoin the real thing, okay? Even Ray Dalio the other day basically said, oh, maybe I'm mistaken about this. This is his first way of saying I'm wrong, by the way. Okay, he won't say it out front, but now he's kind of hedging his opinion in the past and saying, well, maybe there was something I didn't know about this, something that's different than I thought. Chase Bank, Citibank. I mean, look, it's endless, right? This is just where we are in the cycle. This is where we are in the evolution of Bitcoin. And it's important to know that this next 4-year cycle, that this next year or two is going to basically realize that value, okay? It's going to unlock the value now that the accumulation has occurred and it's mostly over. The supply is low. The supply is going to stay low, of course, for the next 2.5 to 3 years, and we'll get less again. But it's a cyclical market. It's a cyclical nature of this. And we're on the cusp here of all-time highs, and all-time highs unlocks the next level in the 4-year cycle. We're just now crossing, or about to cross next month, the halfway point of the cycle. And the first couple of years are about accumulation. The third year is generally about the blow off, and the fourth year is about the bear market. And that's where we are at the moment. This is a segue now into the chart. Okay, this is the weekly. I don't want to focus much on the weekly. This is not supposed to be a short-term timing service or a video, but I want to cover something pretty important, I believe. As you can see, since the March capitulation lows, this ended this mini bear market from the June 2019 highs. So we had this massive surge early in the 4-year cycle that took a lot of people by surprise. And as a result, we needed to revert back to the mean because we moved way too quickly through that process. Okay, so we needed to revert back to the mean in a bear market. This here looked as if this ended the decline. It did not, of course, because we had the capitulation with the coronavirus event. And here we are rebuilding. This is the move back to the mean. This is the accumulation phase. And this is the point more recently where there's just not enough supply anymore. The accumulation has gobbled up what remaining supply there was. Nobody wants to sell at this level, and now you've got new price discovery all the way up to the 18,000 level. I don't know where this little move ends, but to me, this is a mini blow-off move for this cycle, for this period in here. I believe the March lows to wherever we end up here will end a cycle, and this here will then move back lower. It could make an all-time high. Hopefully it does. We don't know. It could double top at that point. It's really irrelevant to this video, but we're coming to an end at this point, and I think what's going to happen at that point is that we may need to consolidate. We're going to look for 30% declines at some point. If I go and look for the last 30% decline, it was here in obviously the coronavirus decline. Did you know that this is now the longest period at around about 36 weeks between 30% declines? If you go back over the 11-year history of Bitcoin's price, you will never find a period this long between 30% declines. People think that we're not going to see another 30% decline, but we will. We absolutely will. And in prior bull markets, as you can see from here, this is the longest, or was the longest period between 30% declines. It's now been eclipsed by this current one. But as you can see, even during this period, which is pretty similar to where we are now, we had 30% declines, 30% declines, 30%, 30%. We had, I think this one may have been as well, we had plenty of 30% declines, and we also had 30% declines in the past. So be warned, you will get a shakeout, you will get 30% declines, and even a 30% decline from where we stand today. Okay, again, I'm not saying we're getting one right here, but a 30% decline from just today, for example, is getting us back to 12,900. It's a $5,500 decline. It's going to come at some point. Does it come from here? Does it come from the $21,000 level? Does it come from the $25,000 level? I just don't know. Point is, be aware of that. And then when I switch out to the monthly chart, excuse me about that. When I switch out to the monthly chart, okay, picture perfect, right? Now I'm using the closing basis here from the 2017-18 top. But from a closing basis, we're clearly on the way now. We have the 10-month moving average starting to really slope higher. Similar to the prior 4-year cycle when it broke out, we had the accumulation phase, and here we are right now in a similar manner. But as you can see, this is as clean as it gets. We had a surprise surge here. Now we have this cup pattern here. We had the capitulation that shook so many people out, especially all the leverage traders. So much of that leverage position got really thrown out with this, and that set the scene for what we're seeing right now. But from a 4-year cycle standpoint, right, let's go back and look at the original 4-year cycle chart from 2 years ago and also from 16 or 18 months ago. So here's the video from April of 2019. This is the one where the video where I basically said the 4-year cycle's on, right? We've got confirmation that it's on, and I'm talking here about sort of just as a guide what it might look like. And we're talking here about the first kind of touch at all-time highs in November of 2020, which is out where we are right now. So yes, we've probably come a little steeper than maybe I thought, and obviously right here I don't show that big surge, but the point really is that just like in prior cycles, it takes a while to build the base. And you know, this is when price was at 4,000. So we've built this base, and then we start to get up towards the 20,000. But here what I'm trying to illustrate, what I think is important, is that once we get to that all-time high level, that we need to probably pull back, or we probably will pull back. And I think it's going to be more important even today, because we haven't seen much of a pullback. Let's go to the weekly. Here's the weekly. We haven't seen a pullback yet. So we've really just shot out from this 12,000, 11,500, 12,000 area, which is why I think, yes, we can easily test or exceed the all-time highs, which is only, you know, what is it, 19,600. It's only $1,500. It can do that tomorrow, potentially, or next week. But my point is that I think we're going to double top, or maybe slightly exceed, or exceed by $1,000 or so dollars. And then what we need to likely see, let's go to the monthly here, is, so here's, let's just call it, let's make it up to the wick. So we're going to get up to this point, and I think what we need to see, and I've always talked about not breaking cleanly, at least through the all-time high levels until April of 2021. That's where I've always shown in previous videos, I think we break. So let's just say we get up that point. I think we can spend the next, and this is a monthly chart, right? So I think we can spend the next few months forming a flag here before making that run up to where we get to a top in either late 2022 or a top in late 2021 or early 2022. I'll take either or. I don't know for sure. Where a top occurs in the cycle is very difficult to predict. What I'm focused more on is the next cycle low in the end of 2022. That's where I think, that's what I'm more focused on. Where the top occurs is difficult to say, and at what price. That's irrelevant for now. We'll cross that bridge when time comes. But my point here is that this has been a great run, and we've come off really, $3,800 in March this year. And even from the $6,000 level, we're up significantly. And this looks on the short to intermediate time frame to be more of a blow-off move. You see the separation in a 10-month moving average. You see the separation here in the 10-week moving average. All indications are that we need to pull back, but it doesn't have to be a crash. It doesn't have to be anything sinister. It just means we need to be prepared. As hodlers, we need to be prepared. It means don't try and time it. Don't try and get cute. Too many times, folks have tried to sidestep a decline and thought, well, if I sold now at 18,000 and I bought at 14,000, I can get 20% more Bitcoin, for example. Yes, in theory you could, but in theory, Bitcoin could be at $25,000 next month without a pullback, and you've now become an alcoholic, right? Because you can't handle that anymore. And then you will buy at 25,000 because you're drunk. No, because you just can't handle it anymore. And what's going to happen then is you'll get the 30% decline. Of course, you'll get the 30% decline when you finally get back in, when you can't get enough. So listen, everybody, I'm not going to complicate this. I'm not going to spend 10, 20, half an hour just going over charts for no reason, right? This is a long play. This is a 4-year cycle. And we're at 18,000. I'm not in the least bit surprised. I'm not even in the least bit excited by this, to be honest with you. I don't want to get excited, but I don't need to hold myself back. Many of you are getting too excited. I know that as well. But my goal is 100,000 minimum. Okay, that's where I'm looking at my goal, and I'll get excited then, and I'll take some profit for sure, and hopefully I'll take much more profit than that. Maybe we get to 150 or 200. I don't know. It's irrelevant. When you start to think about how much Bitcoin you have versus the price at 100,000 and above, and you start to plan what you're going to do with that, you're setting yourself up for failure. It's difficult to hold massive gains. I've told you this before. The hardest part of trading is realizing your goals, maximizing your potential. Okay, people have no problem holding a loser down to the ground and puking it out, but they have a problem holding a winner. It's psychological. It's the fear of losing the money. FOMO is one thing. Okay, that's obviously, but there's also the fear of kind of losing your open profit. And some of us here are on 3x and 4x profit already. But when we get to 30 and 40,000, we're looking at 5, 6x profit. It gets serious, right? And it becomes serious money to anybody because it's all relative. So at $40,000 and $50,000, it gets really serious. And when we get a drop of 20% at the $50,000 range, you're talking about a $10,000 decline per Bitcoin. It becomes vitally important that you are prepared for that, because it will happen. 100% guarantee you it's going to happen, and you need to be ready for that. So let's get into the model portfolio now and talk about some of the positions and where I may be looking to release the pressure, the profit pressure in the future. All right, so let's take a quick look at the model portfolio. We just made 3 purchases over the last 2 years. Of course, in the first video, I made that 25 BTC purchase. The idea there was to show a $100,000 portfolio. Of course, for some people, it's going to be 10,000. It's going to be for some it's 1,000. For some, it's 1 million or 10 million. This is a model based on a $100,000 allocation. We then went on to buy 5 more Bitcoin at 9,600. That was done in September of 2019. Why? Because at that point, in September of 19, we were down from a high, we were down 43%. So actually at the 9,000 level, we were down around 30-something%. The trigger there for me was 30% in the bull market. So we had declined 30%. Now, it was too early in hindsight, okay, because we obviously got much lower prices beyond that. We even got down to 6,500 here, which would have been reasonable. But the point is, in a bull market, okay, sensible purchases still get bailed out in many ways. I remember people coming back onto some of my past videos and saying, "Oh, look, you bought high at 9,600." Well, Yeah, I did. I could have got lower, of course, right? In hindsight's always 2020, but now this position is up almost 100%. Then, of course, we went on and bought one more position, posted in real time here on the channel in March. The capitulation on the rebound, 4,400. Another good price. The average price here is around about 4,800 for 35 Bitcoin. The 35 Bitcoin for hodlers is up 267%. And it's been pretty easy. And we now have strong hands because we got in early and we held. I doubt many people trying to trade this actively could have outperformed the hodl. Now, question though that most people want to know is, where do we sell? Well, the first sell target was moved a long time ago. The original one I think was 16,000. When we hit the 14,000 level and came all the way back down to 4,000, 16 no longer became relevant, because if we exceeded, let's go, here it is here. This is the peak, 14,000. Once we got back down, I knew that if we exceeded that level and got to 16,000 in price, which is up in this level, that the bull market was back on, that this was not a big left translated top. Let's look at this here on the monthly actually. Here's that peak. There was initial concern that we had or could have had a 4-month peak in the cycle, not failed to make a new high, and spent the 4 years or the 3.5 years in mostly declining phase. So I knew then, therefore, if we exceeded this level, this 14,000 level, and got to 16, there was no point in selling at 16, because I think we're going off to all-time highs. And this is where I see the market today. So my first target is 28,000. Why am I selling at 28 if I believe it's going to 100,000 or more? Good question. And I am prepared to leave some off the table if I sell 5 Bitcoin at 28,000. Why am I doing that? Well, I've got 170 in on this model portfolio. If I sell 5 of that, okay, I'm only selling 5/35ths of the portfolio, around 15% of the allocation, slightly more. I'm selling about 16% of the allocation to get all my money back. And then I would have what you call ultimate super hands, or you can call it playing with the house's money. When you play with the house's money, you're not afraid as much of losing it. And when you're not afraid of that, you're more likely to hold when Bitcoin gets to 50 and 60 and 70 and 80 and $100,000 per coin. The remaining 30 coins that I have, I won't have that feeling of, hey, am I gonna let an opportunity go and also lose money in this? I know I won't lose money at all, no chance, by selling my 5 Bitcoin here. The rest of it from then on will become discretionary, mostly discretionary based on the timing of the cycle. So I'm more concerned about topping in either this late 2021 period, so I think by November, and in between, say, March. If by November, okay, depending on where we are, I would be on a heightened alert for a top. However, I think this 4-year cycle will end not necessarily on the type of a euphoria that we saw right here, but on at least a massive kind of blow off or some type of significant blow off like move. And we're going to hope to be able to spot that mostly in real time. It won't be perfect, but I think we'll be able to get something close, at least on a trailing stop basis, to capture a lot of these gains. But if we look, it's obviously going to be a great problem to have, and nobody's going to catch everything perfectly or right to the top. The point is to get there with most of your Bitcoin intact in your pocket or in your wallet, so you can realize the majority of the gains. The goal is to get at least 80% of those gains. And of course, the last 20% are difficult to hold, because even as you can see from this last move, right? These are just monthly candles. The last month went from 9,000 to 20,000. The last $10,000 of that move occurred within a 2 to 3 week span. So it's not easy. I remember trading this, and I sold quite a bit of this at the top of this candle, around 11 to 12,000, thinking that we're very close to a top. In hindsight, we weren't really that close, but Was I happy with 11,000 from buying in at $600 or $700? Of course I was happy, because my expectations were set that way. My goal was for a 10x from the prior breakout point, so around the $1,100 range. I was always eyeing the $10,000 to $12,000 range, but I still held some of it and still got some out at 19,000 and 20,000 because I let the trend go and we rode that. Now, hopefully we'll do even better this time around. Again, that's still in the future, but we are talking about the model portfolio. The goal, therefore, is to take some off the table first and then just basically monitor the conditions, knowing full well that along the way up, we're going to see 30% declines. And again, I like to say this, but a 30% decline at the $100,000 level is a $30,000 decline. We may get a situation in the future where we hit 100,000, we decline to 70,000, we get everybody puked their leverage positions, and then we make a run to 200 as an example. That's going to be a possibility. We're going to have to be hyper aware of that. It's not going to be easy. I can guarantee you when you're sitting on a $100,000 Bitcoin, it's not easy to hold that in the face of a decline like that. But these are the types of challenges you need to set yourself up for. It's not okay to just dream about how much money you're going to make. You have to dream about how you're going to handle scenarios and situations in the future, because they're going to come. They've already coming. They've been hitting us recently. We got hit with one here. How many of you puked this capitulation in March with coronavirus? How many people thought it was all over? Okay, they happen. Okay, a lot of people missed this big move up here as well. All this happens. It's going to happen again in the future. We need to be prepared for them. So this portfolio page is available all the time on 4yearjourney.com, the number 4yearjourney.com. You click on model portfolio. Of course, all the content, all of the prior videos are here as well, but they're obviously here on YouTube. And if you want to download Brave and give some charity to, by downloading Brave, some BAT to charity, then that also is welcomed. It's very small, but it's something. Okay, let's move on now to some simple lessons to end this video. So I just want to remind everybody that widen the lens. Here's the quarterly view. This is most of Bitcoin's history right here. BLX, here it is right here, all the way from 1 cent to $17,000. This is a secular bull market chart here with cyclical bear markets within 4-year cycle low declines. This is continuing. It's continuing. We got to 17,000 here without the Bitcoin ETF. Remember the ETF? Oh, we need an ETF. This is the only way it's going to go in. Bollocks. We don't need an ETF. We didn't get an ETF. Okay. Remember that news and narratives don't matter. This is a secular bull market that's based on the discovery of a new monetary solution and technology. And the market is beginning to embrace it. The market is beginning to understand it. And of course, as I opened, it is a technology that is proven already. The supply and inflation schedules are fixed. They're proven. Okay. The only thing that Bitcoin, again, has lacked is time in production, time to build trust. But that changes with each passing day, with each month, with each year. With each month and year that passes, trust develops, and trust is where value is derived from. And this is what you're seeing in this chart here. In the beginning days, people knew how exciting it was. They knew about the technology, so they wanted to believe in it. They want to hold it. And the early hodlers, that's what hodling is all about. Hodlers know that the value represented today in $17,000 is not fair to them. It's not a fair value because they understand the power that Bitcoin holds for them in the future. The market just needs time to realize that, and we will get there, okay? It's just cyclical. We have to go through the cyclical waves within that adoption curve. I mean, nothing has really changed really in the last 2 years, or even this last year. But within this last year, price has been at 4,000. Nobody wanted it. People were scared. It's been at 8,000, at 12,000, all within 2020 alone. And most of the time this year, people didn't want Bitcoin. Now it's at 18,000 and suddenly everybody wants it. What the hell? It's because humans are simple beings. They're driven by greed and emotion. That's what drives the price, of course. But they naturally want to follow. And for here, the whole point of this video series is not to follow, but not necessarily to lead, but to lead yourself and to be ahead of the curve, to be a contrarian in many ways, to understand that deep value here for Bitcoin is all entrenched in the time aspect of this and not the short-term price duration. Traders can focus on short-term time. We as hodlers are focusing on Bitcoin's technology, its value that's going to be derived over time, and we focus on our emotions and the psychology of what a hodler needs to know to get there, to get to the other side. Okay, so if people are feeling this way now, below all-time highs, what the hell is going to happen when Bitcoin hits 30,000 or 50,000, or dare I say 100,000? I believe that's going to be coming. I've been talking about it coming, and I'm not the only one, obviously. I'm not claiming to be, but we've been talking about it for a couple of years now. People have been talking about it for 8 to 10 years. Okay, people have been talking about it since the inception when there wasn't a price. Hal Finley talked about $1 million Bitcoin and being a reserve when there wasn't even a market for it. Okay, so people have been talking about this for a while, and this is where I think Bitcoin has so much power. People believe, fundamentally in this product, well, not product, in this technology, in Bitcoin as money. And for that reason, with the supply restraints that we see, there's only one way over time for those who are patient to go for Bitcoin. So 100,000 will come, and I think more than 100,000 will come. And in future 4-year cycles, whether it's the one to follow this one or the one to follow the other one, okay, maybe that $1 million Bitcoin will also come. That's getting ahead of ourselves. But the point is that you don't want to rebuy it in the future at those prices. You want to be holding from these basement levels, and you want to, of course, maximize the 4-year cycle, because we want to sell in the 4-year cycle top because we want to buy double and triple the amount of Bitcoin at the 4-year cycle low, okay, at the bottom. I managed to sell a lot at 11,000, 12,000, and a lot at 19 and 20,000, and that allowed me to buy more than I could have otherwise at that 4-year cycle low level. And I'm hoping that's what's going to happen in the future for you as well. All right. So on this journey here, it's all been about going against the herd and focusing on time. Okay, buying your position early, being super content with that position, okay, and allowing us to get into where we are today, which is what I call super strong hand position. A super strong hand position is when you buy it so low, you can afford to not get caught up in the day-to-day and the week-to-week swings in price that we see in Bitcoin, okay? And like I said, our average price is now 4,800 on these 35 Bitcoins. It makes it so much easier to hold here, but also what makes it easier is knowing that we're not done with this journey. We're not done with this until we capture the majority of the gains that are to come in this cycle, and they are now on the horizon. We have waited this long for those gains. We've waited patiently. We've gone through, again, those collapses and all of everything that's occurred over the last 2 years. At certain times it looked dark, and I know you doubted yourself and doubted your position, and I'm sure some of you sold some positions and bought back higher and so on. Those are all lessons you need to take to heart now. Yes, you may have made some mistakes leading up to this point, but there are no more mistakes to be made with Bitcoin at 18,000. Will you get another opportunity at 13 or 14? Yes, possibly. I don't know. The point is that nobody knows. The point is that we're in this for the 4-year journey. We're in this for the peak, and we are getting closer to that peak in many respects, both from price and time, and there aren't as many mistakes that you can make and still come out of this significantly life-changing results because of that. So I want to wrap up this video. It's just been off the cuff. I'm sorry if it's a little disjointed and all over the place. I just want to speak openly and freely and just speak my mind as it comes to me. I'm hoping it provides some value to you. We're at the point now where I think I've covered most of or everything you need to know in these video series. Go back over the prior ones, listen to some of them, listen to how we respond at certain times in the cycle. Of course, I will provide more videos in the future. I don't know when the next one's going to come. It may be not until 2021, probably won't be until 2021. But stay healthy, stay focused. The journey's ahead. It's about to get really exciting. And if you let that excitement boil over and impact your decision making, you're going to regret it for a long time. Work on it. All the best to you. Thanks for being here. If you want to like and share, I appreciate it, and take care.